Neighborhoods, like people, carry the collective memory of all that came before. It's a thread that ties us to our past and lights our future.
Ready for us!
At the intersection of Haight and Ashbury, at the heart of one such neighborhood, you can see a community's rebirth and hear the echoes of a revolution past. The Haight Ashbury neighborhood has come to be defined by a single season, a single summer.
The Haight Ashbury, for so many different things, has served as a cauldron of ideas with, relatively limited reality base. So it was a place where young people came that were idealistic, evolved a value system that was different than the dominant culture, and expressed those ideas.
Things felt imminently possible. And with the enthusiasm and error of the young, we thought that we were going to completely change the world. And we were half right.
There was one period where all of a sudden, it's about 2 weeks where just everything felt like magic. It was like magic. We could do no wrong. Everything was absolutely perfect, and you couldn't help but have your face would hurt from smiling so much. Everybody was so happy, which, obviously that can't last.
And it was very tolerant. It was very loose. It was very open. It was very artistic. It was also a rock and roll scene that was starting to happen, and the words were getting out via national media.
When the record companies got involved and we realized that we had these opportunities to make these records for the first time, and I'm telling you, most of us had never even made anything, maybe than a little demo recording or something like that, but none of us had made albums, anything like that.
I got to come back here and plug in a real loud electric guitar and play as loud as I wanted to, smoke a whole lot of dope, take acid and speed and everything else, and there was lots of girls, lots of sex, and what more could you possibly want?
And then it got to this place where, we were, if anything, too aware of that, and we were saying, I think in 2 years we can end the war in Vietnam. There'll be women's rights, there'll be gay rights, there'll be civil rights. We're going to make all these strides and cure all this stuff, and it's going to be, those problems are going to be over with. And then it took a lot longer to realize, no, those problems aren't going to be over with. They're always going to be here.
To understand what the Summer of Love was, is not to see it only as a counterculture movement, but as a grand social experiment.
So we were doing a lot of social, cultural research and development. A lot of stuff didn't work. A lot of stuff did.
We kind of saw ourselves as guinea pigs and then freaks, and then we had guys like Ken Kesey come in and say, hey, let's all take this together and play music and turn on these crazy lights and so on, that kind of thing.
The experiment's hypothesis was simple. We can all live as one in a community of peace and love.
The idea was sort of an optimism that we can do this and we can do it right. We don't have to hurt anybody. We can, that was the philosophy. You don't want to hurt the planet. You don't want to hurt anything. You want everything to be, it's basically do unto others. It's all the same old philosophy of any religion, it's just trying to live it is hard to do without being hypocritical.
We were trying to invent a counterculture. We were trying to invent an alternate that felt more human and more compassionate, where we had more choices than just being an employee or a consumer. Both of those seemed like a lame meal.
Here, again, it's like you're living on a block where all the kids were like you. You felt support. You felt that maybe you weren't as crazy as your retired Marine Corps Colonel uncle said you were. That there was something to what you were into and there was some value to it. And in that sense, the sense of community lifted everyone's spirits.
This community, This neighborhood was the canvas for a historic burst of artistic expression and social change.
San Francisco's just been a city it's invited people to come in and participate in its kind of looseness. I mean, and looseness, of course, goes to all sorts of other different things besides the arts and culture.
But I think what happened in the 60s really had a transformative impact on this neighborhood specifically, because somehow the fire that got lit then has continued to burn at a very steady pace throughout.
The Haight would always smolder at that steady pace, heat rising to meet neighborhood challenges. The Summer of Love represented a flash fire, burning the neighborhood in the process.
And what happened was it became overloaded. It was overloaded because people poured in to the Haight Ashbury neighborhood and to San Francisco, and they couldn't handle it.
You got a lot of people who weren't into music going there, runaways, teenage runaways, right? People with broken hearts. These people are not into anything, you know what I mean? You had people who just got out of San Quentin, you know. So pretty soon it wasn't a music scene anymore, because it was people looking like they were in bands, but they weren't in bands, and there was hundreds and thousands of them.
By the time that happened, it wasn't a summer of love. There were a lot of hard drugs. It was a summer of confusion and hard drugs and disillusionment in a way. So, it was already gone. The summer of love had happened a long time, a couple of years before, it seemed like.
The story of the Haight is unfinished, a continual work in progress. As the neighborhood struggles with its past and future identity, the current chapter being written is one of rebirth and redemption.
Yes, the hippies happened here, the Summer of Love happened here, but since then, something really changed. And I think what's changed is that the community and the people who live here and people who continue to come to live here have really embraced that as kind of like a value, as a core value, to encourage this kind of very interesting meeting point and breeding ground for people with different points of view. I mean, this is as good as a truly pluralistic society gets.
It all started right here. This is everything that takes place, people protesting or opposing or whatever. It all started right here. Before the Haight Ashbury, it didn't exist. We didn't do it. Government said, we followed. And that was it. And it all started right here. And it'll be like this, especially here in San Francisco, for many, forever. It'll never change here.
You have to come here with the right frame of mind. If you come here looking for everything that was going on 40 years ago, you can't go back. Not going to happen. Doesn't mean you can't perpetuate what happened. I mean, the music thing is a universal elixir has always worked. That's what it's always been. People are looking for an escape, especially now.
You're never going to be able to go to a magical geography that's going to emblemize perfection. Can't do it. Doesn't work. So I don't care if the Haight Ashbury disappears. It was appropriate at the moment. There'll be some other place that's the perfect nexus of time and ideas and aspirations, it'll show up.
When you move here, the second leading tourist attraction in San Francisco is Haight Ashbury for obvious reasons. I mean, it's the most romanticized and sensationalized decade of time known to man, probably the best era of music in the history and annals of contemporary rock and roll. It's all right here. Unfortunately, the city doesn't put plaques out so everybody knows about it, so it takes historians or someone who's grown up with that to kind of perpetuate that whole ideology and music that defined an entire generation. So
Unlike the rock and roll that preceded, the sound coming out of San Francisco possessed an emphatic percussive beat, a bass line that often determined the direction of a song, and dominant expanded roles for electric guitar and keyboard. Brass instruments rarely, if ever, had a voice within these arrangements.
was like the light bulb went off in their head that perhaps if we just add a little bass and drums and a little keyboard to some of the stuff we've already been doing, it might really catch on. It might be worth recording, and we might make a good recording and something people would really enjoy.
But what happened was that we discovered, hey, the dial goes to 10. What happens if we turn the dial to 10? What we discovered was it had an effect on the audience. The audience went like, whoa! So everything changed.
5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock.
Like America, the sound from the Bay Area was a melting pot of song styles running the gambit of 20th century musical genres. In that sense, the so-called San Francisco sound was all that had come before it.
And so what we did musically was kind of just a combination of R&B and some rock tunes and whatever possible jazz licks we could throw in, but in the spirit of playing jazz, so that we didn't play the same thing twice. We would just take a theme and improvise on it, and sometimes we'd play songs, you know, like 25, 30 minutes long.
I really think rock and roll music is what did it. It took away inhibitions, set things in motion, dancing got more seductive, you know, it was sensual. You know, you could make records that made people do whatever you wanted to make them do. You know, whichever way you want them to go politically, you could actually affect the world.
Some of these artists, understandably frustrated with the civil rights struggle and the Vietnamese conflict of the moment, injected lyrics with direct calls for action.
And it's 1, 2, 3, what are we fighting for? Don't ask me, I don't give a damn. Next stop is Vietnam. And it's 5, 6, 7, open up the pearly gates. Ain't no time to wonder why we're all gonna die.
But in point of fact, there were lots of people that may have liked our political ideas, but they didn't like the way we looked. They didn't like the free sex, or they didn't like the use of drugs. They didn't like the way our children were kind of feral. And we lost access to those people.
But America is based on doing something new. That's the paradox of America for the world. It's a symbol of new. But even Americans want to hang on to what they got. And the World War II generation really wanted to hang on to that.
That's when you realize the people in the middle of this country, they either didn't know who the fuck we were, or they threw shit at us. Because we were those lousy, you know, motherfuckers that didn't go and fight in the war and this and that. And, you know, after I came back from Vietnam, I didn't want to tell anybody that I was there.
The collective image that came out to the Midwest, to the heartland of America, of all of these combined things, was that the Bay Area had lost its mind. You know, it was really anti everything that America stood for, you know.
See, they were real scared of us because we didn't have money, but we had access to art and music without money. And that scared the hell out of them, you know what I mean? They created a whole world without any of us on our stupid trip, man. Uh-oh, you know?
It symbolizes something that is very threatening to the dominant culture. And that it is what the right wing calls the culture war. Mm-hmm. And that culture war is still going on, except the stage is national.
One band epitomized the vibe of the neighborhood. They took their music seriously and their lives playfully. They were the Grateful Dead.
What I found from the band was this intense appreciation of all kinds of music and this intense kind of psychedelic reality that passion coupled with a discipline is going to take you somewhere.
Abandoning largely acoustic beginnings, the Dead set down to create a distinct electrified musical sound. The band took up residence 1 block south of the intersection of Haight and Ashbury, an old Victorian at 710 Ashbury.
we were all thrown into a house together, and we're kind of joined at the hip, forced into it in a sense, you know. So being on this course towards musicianship and trying to build a following and trying to do all of that stuff and being in a vibrant community and everything like we were, it was easy to feel brotherhood and unity there, you know.
As a concert promoter would remark years later in describing them, the Grateful Dead may not be the best at what they do, but they are the only band that do what they do.
Remember, we were the creators of the music. We don't look upon it as something like an album cut or something fixed in stone. For us, it's living, it's plastic, it's vital, it's changeable. There's no such thing as an ultimate performance of the piece. Some of them, to be sure, might be better than others, but when I think of any of those pieces, Dark Star, St. Stephen, The 11, it's a piece that I can go out and play tomorrow, and it might be as good or better than any time before. It's a living thing. It's an organic entity.
Though record labels were eager to sign the Dead and other Bay Area bands, what to do with them was another matter.
My favorite part of that music was the sense that you could do anything. There wasn't somebody there to say, no, that's not commercial, that won't work. It has to fit in a 3.5-minute record. And
yeah, we were all just saying, isn't this amazing? Look at these, all these bands, and they all sound so completely different, and yet here we are, and all go to each other's gigs, and it was cool for a while.
I didn't really think at the time that my involvement in Big Brother and the Holding Company was any kind of pivotal point in musical history. It was just something that I did with a bunch of other guys and a girl. And it was fun, it was a gas to do this stuff, you know, rehearsing, playing for people who danced. But the importance down the line, I didn't think about that.
No, we never really thought about, well, we're going to be stars. I mean, our whole point was we can make enough money to pay our rent and be able to smoke pot. We'll be happy, you know.